since you started streaming all those millennia ago, has authoritarianism crept back in across the West?
I mean, the easy answer is just say, well, yes, and then list a series of ways in which the government curtails our freedoms and things like that. But it's been like this for a long time, actually. And there's always been a kind of closed atmosphere in Western liberal societies that we weren't really aware of because we had a consensus or popular consensus. And it was very difficult for dissident voices from outside of the consensus to break into it because, of course, you would need mass media prior to the internet and social media. But now that social media exists, we're finding a lot of, from both the left and the right, dissident voices interjecting themselves into our discussions and presenting us with uncomfortable truths, which we often would otherwise be blind to. And so it's... The current sort of progressive regime that the West lives under, sort of international, global, multi-culti, the sort of thing I'm talking about, that's always had its censorious tendencies, and we are seeing it expand now. The fact that you can go to jail for critiquing Islam, or being against LGBT ideology and things like this. And people say, well, hang on a second, you're not going to jail for that. It's like, no, what you're going to jail for is inciting hatred. But you could classify any critique of any of these minority groups as an incitement to hatred. And therefore, really what you're saying is these are essentially a kind of blasphemy law against the ideology or the religion or whatever. And so, yes is the answer, but it has always kind of been this way to a certain degree.
Are there examples of people actually going to prison for saying things that aren't inciting violence?
Oh, yeah. Because it's about the interpretation of inciting hatred. See, I didn't say violence, I said hatred.
Okay.
This is a very elastic word to use. And there are people who are punished for this all the time. It's just you don't hear about them because they're just not made a big song and dance about, because it's just a part of British life now. Remember, something like 3,500 people a year go to jail over things they post on social media. And that's outside of the sort of spike that would have happened during the Southport riots, where lots of people got sent to jail for lots of things. I mean, one chap was sent to jail for waving an England flag at the police. So we're in a situation where if the authorities want to contrive a reason to put you into jail, it's actually quite easy to do so, because anything could conceivably be considered to be inciting hate. You'll notice that they've got certain client groups that never fall afoul of these. When was the last time a non-white person was put in jail for race hatred?
I don't know.
Well, exactly, no one knows. Right?
Does that not happen?
Well, have you ever heard of it happening?
No. I mean, Hamza Yousaf was the most, in my opinion, most blatant example of a very clearly racist and angrily spoken speech from someone who in that time was serving as First Minister of Scotland. That on white, so aggressive. And people have tried to explain that to me, going, no, but he was responding because somebody was talking. I don't care what he was responding about. It was the point he made. So he wasn't arrested. And I feel like if I'd gone in the street and said that, black, Jewish, gay, any of those things, I'd be, I don't know. I was going to say rightfully locked up, but I actually don't know what I think about rightfully or not.
I don't think it should be rightfully. I mean, I actually do think you should be able to say the things you want to say and not be punished for it, because I'm quite old-fashioned. But that's exactly the point. Hamza Yousaf, there was a bill in Scotland that recently passed. I can't remember what it was called, but it's essentially some kind of online harms bill variant where it's concerned about race hatred and things like that. And he got thousands of complaints about that speech under that bill.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can't do things retroactively, so nothing could come of it. But people are aware that these laws are used in one direction. They're not omnidirectional. They're not universal laws for everyone. This is the race hatred laws are a really clear example of two-tier policing, in fact, because all of, for example, the grooming gangs, they're all underpinned by a kind of ethnic resentment and contempt. That it was done to English girls because they were vulnerable English girls. And a lot of the victims will come out and say to you, they call me a white slag and things like this. So there'd be open race hatred involved. There was one case, I can't remember the name of the lady, But she was essentially told to stand in the middle of the room and just not look at the ground because she wasn't allowed to look at the Muslim men and things like this. So it's very, it's worse than you would think. But there's obviously the dimension of race hatred in there, and of course, this is not the crime that they're being convicted on, because these are sort of amplifiers to the sentences that people would otherwise get, but they're not added on. And so these people will be out in 5 years, 7 years, whatever it is, rather than a much longer sentence. If it were an English person doing the same thing with the same contempt in their hearts. And so I think people are becoming aware that, we live in quite a tyrannical society that is actually racial and racialized. It penalizes white people and doesn't penalize non-white people for certain things that they say. And that's just self-evident at this point.